I hope that we will have the broader scope, so we will be able to address the issue in a more general manner or in a more diverse manner. We have a fantastic panel today, and I would like to present two speakers that we have arrived in Kyiv specifically to meet with us. And next to me is Ron Prozor, who is and I'm translating from Ukrainian into English now, head of the Institute of the International Diplomacy in Aba Ебан, former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. And next from me is Dен Мерідор, who is president of the Israeli Council on Foreign Relations and former deputy prime minister of Israel from 2009 till 2013. And then here is Роман Зінченко, who is head of the Green Incubator project, but those who work in Ukraine know that Roman is actually the person who has innovations written all over his resume and his activities. And the last but not the least is Mykола Мовчан, who is deputy head of Ministry for Youth and Sport, and his scope is European integration, and he is actually the person who sees also a broad international picture as part of his everyday duties. We're talking about the Israeli experience of supporting the innovation, so I think we should give our guests the floor so they start and frame our discussion. And then our Ukrainian colleagues will pick up from there, and then I hope we have a good conversation here amongst ourselves. So, Mr. Prozor, please, the floor is yours.
First of all, thank you. And it's a joy to be here with you. And basically, when you look at everything, you know, every country, the most important thing is to look at society. And if you look at the Israeli society or the Jewish society, you basically look at a society that is standing on the shoulders of giants. What do I mean by that? From the whole issue of the biblical idea of looking at everything from all sides, questioning, what did God mean here? What did he mean there? Huge discussion leading to challenging the existing paradigms in everything. Now, when you come to Israel, from kindergarten to the army, you see a very undisciplined society. Everyone talks out of turn. Inside the Shabbat table, Dan can tell you, with the children, the grandchildren, everyone talks out of turn. Everyone basically challenges what the other one has to say. And it's very undisciplined and very vocal, but at the end of the day, it brings out what we at the end call innovation. Now, what has Israel been able to do? Israel was able to really take its liabilities and turn them into assets. So, for example, when God promised us the land of milk and honey. It took Moses 40 years. He wasn't a great navigator. There was no ways there, and he reached the Holy Land. There was no honey, no milk, and no money. And we had to basically begin from finding solutions. So we had a scarcity of water. You saw the idea of drip irrigation to desalinization. But I want to take something that is a very good example for this whole notion, and that is the army. The army is, in essence, a liability, right? But we managed to turn that also into an asset. Why? Because you have at your disposal at the age of 18 the best and the brightest minds. It doesn't make a difference if your father is the king or your mother is the queen. At the age of 18, you enlist. And what we were able to do is basically to say, David or Moshe at the age of 17, they're good in mathematics. Let's say, for example, a name that you should know, Kira Radinsky, came from the Ukraine to Israel at the age of 4, okay? She is good in mathematics. We will put her into the intelligence. And in essence, David has good leadership skills. Bottom line, we put the relevant people to challenge the existing paradigms in the fields that in essence create innovation. For example, the army is a place where we have to put in a lot of resources, a lot of manpower. At the end of the day, this is spin-offs to our technology. So if we have to protect our computers, this is the base for companies like Checkpoint. If we need to give answers to missiles from Iran, this is the base for our space program. And in the sense, what I'm trying to say is that innovation begins by allowing a culture of asking questions, open questions, not being afraid to fail, and the support for failure. And I think the Israeli society is a society that in essence supports failure. If you fail, try again. Try again. The world would know what the Jewish mother understands from birth, that you're a genius. So it takes time to understand that, but in the sense, what you create is a culture of questioning, all the time questioning, which leads at the end of the day to innovation. And it's based on what the society creates. So if I have to say something to the Ukraine on this sense, open it up, allow questions in every field, in every dimension. In every dimension, and the fact that Israel is small allows those dialogues to be created between people from different parts of technology that work together, and by working together, asking the relevant questions, you reach amazing results.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Merridor, please.
Thank you. It's, I think, the third or fourth time I'm speaking today. I try not to repeat what I said earlier. I hope you will forgive me for that. First of all, I agree with practically every word that my friend Ron said here. I remember the first day I entered the Hebrew University, good number of decades ago, when I finished my army service, and we had a talk with the dean of the Faculty of Law, and he said one thing: you came here for one reason. Give me the answer nobody knew. He said, to cast doubt. Don't accept anything we tell you, we the teachers. Think for yourself. You don't know anything, what you know, forget. Try to rethink everything. You came to cast doubt. This was the word used. So then, in a way, shocking or arousing some interest. And what Ron said is very true. You know, I visited South Korea, not far from Mr. Is the south of him, in Seoul some years ago in a conference on global nuclear security. So I went there for several days, and I was invited by their Atomic Energy Agency of South Korea. And they had a very nice dinner for us. And the head of the agency spoke English that was understandable because he studied in America, I think. He said, we looked for the genius. How is it that you are that smart? Well, I said, we're not that smart. He said, we found the way. It is the Talmud, the way you study, and we teach Talmud in Korean now, which is amazing. Why is that Talmud? Because the Talmud is the book of Jewish religion and law. Jewish law was developed between the 2nd and 5th century AD. It's a huge, voluminous book of many, many volumes. He said because in usually codexes of laws, there is a law. Don't do this, don't murder, don't steal, don't rape, don't do this and that. In your case, they give the whole debate. A rabbi once said this, the other rabbi said the opposite. You need to learn all the pros and cons of everything. Nothing is given as if it's only God's word. No, the discussion is there. So to learn to discuss things, to learn them from the outset and try to see what are the arguments for or against is part of the culture. Now, we speak about Israel. I try not to boast of anything and not to sound not right, but part of it has nothing to do with Israel. There's something with the Jewish culture and way of education. I say it humbly, but I read that the Jews are 0.2% of the world population, 0.2. But they are 20% of Nobel laureates. How come? It's not Israel. Most of them are Jews from America, from Europe, from other places. Again, it's not the genes, I think. It's not the genetic thing. Something in the culture of casting doubt, asking the question, then trying to find different solutions, not to accept the given norm, is embedded in our heritage, in the way we educate. This is why you had so much intellect and so much innovative spirit and entrepreneurship around the world with Jews. It's not just Israel. Israel had this treasure in its hands, and it could do right or wrong. So I think for many years, for reasons that I don't want to go into, we didn't do the right thing. The government did too much. The government thought it can do everything. It didn't really count on the people to find a way. We had begun with a socialist regime, very tough socialist regime, half communist in some cases, and the government told you what to work and where to go, and they gave you the huge taxes and everything. It was very governmental. Along the years, mainly in the 70s and 80s, it had to do with the party. I was a member of Likud, but even the Labour went in that way along the years. The government went out of business to a large extent. About 30 years ago, we had a huge crisis, economic crisis, huge crisis, hundreds of % of inflation, no foreign currency, a huge deficits, impossible. And we really were on the verge of economic collapse, 1982, 83. And then in 84, 85, the government went out of it, and we went through a huge reform. I'll just say the three things that the government stopped doing or does right, and allows the people to take action, which is what happens in Israel. People have the responsibility. We cut the budget deficit. We have no deficits for over 30 years. Minimal, 1-2%, that's it. This was a major thing. It means the government doesn't do things it used to do in the past. Less money for this and for that. So the government is out of the market. It doesn't sit on the market. It's not heavy on the market. The second thing, we allowed liberalization in the foreign currency market, in the labor market, in everything. There was liberalization. The government said, we are not forcing you to get licenses for everything. Do what you can. And the third thing is something that I don't know what you think of it from the Ukrainian side. About 1 million people joined us in the late 80s, beginning of 90s, who were products of the then Soviet education. They came with a lot of knowledge, mathematics and other things. These three major things. 1 million Jews who got 15% addition to the population in 6-7 years. So many people came with talents and creating demand and supply and everything else. And the government out of business and very, very responsible government policies. The government does certain things which should do, even in Ukraine, all that relates to infrastructure, to the basic things that only governments can do. Roads and trains and all these things need to be done by the government, and the government does that quite well. But the people, the business sector, but it's the people, the soldiers that Ron spoke about in the army, it's the students' university. The people are expected by everybody to do something, to think what they can do better, how they can do things. And this is a culture that really was I think, the basis of all that we see here. So the talent that existed there not because of the state, because there was talent developing through generations, burst out in really to the point that we are now called the startup nation, because we had so many startups in the high-tech field and other fields that are quite remarkable for a relatively small country that we are. Another thing I want to, two other things I want to say, and I think they may be of importance. The world is changing very rapidly, very rapidly. Richness or being poor was once for a country measured by the oil wells that you have, how much oil, how much energy you have, and so forth. And we were quite poor in that. The Arabs around us had a lot of oil. We had no oil altogether. I think today much more depends on what you have in your brains, less than what you have down in the earth that you can dig. It's not because of us. The world is going in that direction. Development in technology have changed the world. They have done something that I want to quote here, an American friend and a journalist, well-known journalist from New York called Tom Friedman. In fact, he lives in Washington, but he writes for the New York Times. He wrote a book about globalization, one of several books he wrote in recent years, called The Lexus and the Olive Tree. Lexus is the Japanese car that is the best technology. The olive tree is your culture, the fight between the globalization, technology, and your culture at home. And then he coined a term. He said that the technology allowed people, simple human beings, to be much more powerful than ever in the past. He coined this term, the super-empowered individual. Why is that? Knowledge, information. In old days, you need to go to Harvard or Yale or London School of Economics or Sorbonne to learn. Now you can sit on an island in Indonesia and click the right thing, Google the right thing, and you know everything. Never in human history people could know so much. Now they know it. Technology used to be in the hands of governments. Now it's in the hand of Apple and Google and Microsoft and people, simple people, who created these ways that you find your way in the streets, or Mobileye that helps you drive right. It's all Israelis who invented this. It's not the government, it's people who can have technology. And by the way, finance. Government could control finance. Now people, if you are rich enough, you live in London, you can buy Russian money and sell it in Brazil and change the world. So people became much more powerful. Individuals became much more powerful. And this allows people to do a lot of good things, by the way, and bad things. The non-state actors like Al-Qaeda and Hamas do damage that never individuals could do, only countries. So it's a new world. In that world, the key is technology. The key is people who have a lot of power to do things that they were never able to do in the past. The last thing on this has to do with globalization. And I'll give you the plus and minus here. As an Israeli, years ago, there are now about 9 million Israelis. If I buy and sell to and from Israelis, it's 9 million people. In the global world, but there's no tariffs, well, Trump does not agree with that, but I think it's a very good world. I sell and buy to 7 billion people in the world. If I am smart, I can buy things that are done cheap in China or Malaysia, and when I produce well and cheap, I sell all over the world. This allows people to get much more powerful and in a way rich. This is a new world. It's not your country. It's not the autocracy of countries that are self-sufficient. No, you buy and sell. Israel, half of what it buys comes from abroad. Almost half it sells abroad. It's not the local market. We're in a global market. This is the good side. So people can be much more powerful, and it makes the country powerful. What is the bad side? In the old world, the countries were more self-contained. The borders meant something. Today, the borders mean nothing. Governments could interfere in a good way. That is to say, two people are not equal. They are equal by law, but Ron is smart, I'm stupid. He is very diligent, I am lazy. So if the government doesn't interfere, some people get very rich, some people get very poor. So government interferes. It takes more taxes from me, give to him, more subsidies. When it's a global market, there's no government. So governments cannot easily bridge the gaps in society. So you see all of this world growing gaps in society. So this is a problem that needs to be tackled because humanity will not be silent on this. There will be problems here. But it's a new world, a new game, and the answer is not in the old system. It's how you create in your brains, in your minds, in your experience, a new trick, a new way to solve problems. Army-wise, it's in the other room, the military thing. I've dealt with it a large part of my public life, and we wrote a report on Israel defense some years ago, very useful. One of the things we said, we need the new battlefield, which is very different. It's not the old battlefield, to be re-examined not by me, because I'm too old. We need people some of them should be not over the age of 20. Because people of 40, 50 years have too much experience. It'll be a burden on them. We need people who think differently. Not by moving the tanks from the right, not from the left, but by using this iPhone with the fingers. They don't know how to use a pen because they never had it, like my grandchildren do, better than me. So in a world that is changing so rapidly, and technology is proposing so much as opportunities, individuals are important, and the government should be out as much as they can, but allow the infrastructure of education, of roads, of electricity. I think Israel does that quite well. And if I can give advice to other countries, this is the way to do it. I don't think Israelis by nature are more talented than Ukrainians or Russians or Germans or English. It's the environment, and the government can create the environment of freedom, of liberty. This connects to what I said in earlier sessions. It's the basic human rights, liberty and freedom. If you don't have freedom of thought, freedom of innovation, freedom of action, nothing will grow. Only the government does it better or worse. So this is, I think, a more general philosophy that helps live better and produce better.
Let me pick on this. You have wonderfully went right to the point without making all these long introductions. And I'm amazed as someone who's dealing in my day job with culture and social values, you went right to the cultural issues, skipping the usual institutional talk. So here's the question. The transformative experience that many Israelis have in their living memory is the experience of Holocaust. The experience, the Ukrainian transformative experience is experience of living through totalitarian rule in the Soviet Union, being one or the other way left stripped of agency, let's put it this way. The difference is that we have this experience prolonged for generations, which left an imprint on culture. What is the Israeli experience of blending in people who have different backgrounds in terms of understanding the rules, in terms of understanding success? For instance, how do you assist in joining this innovative spirit, for instance, to those who came from Soviet Union or to those who came from Ethiopia, who have very different backgrounds? In the country as diverse as Ukraine is, what, in your opinion, is the solution, and as traumatized as Ukraine is, what, in your opinion, is the solution for innovations?
You want me to start? Okay.
Please.
You want to start? You touched two waves of immigration. One huge wave from the former Soviet Union, Russia, Ukraine, the Baltic states and other places, Belarus, over 1 million people in a few number of years. And you touched a smaller wave, still a substantial wave of several tens of thousands of people who come from Ethiopia. Without stigmatizing, it's a very different issue. Most people coming from Ethiopia came from 1,000 years backwards in terms of civilization, technology. Some not. Some came from Addis Ababa and they are very educated, like you and me. Some really had a huge civilization leap that they had to go through, and it's very difficult with the older generation. The younger, who go to the army, to the civil society, to universities, find it easier. Even the language, but not only the language. So I have no simple fix. I don't have a simple solution here. How you take old people, old, I mean, not old, 50. 50 is young for me. And tell them, all right, change everything you know. People didn't see running water in a tap. Now find it. They didn't know the basic things. So there's no way. It's not a trick. It's not a mechanical thing. It takes time. So in a way, some people are in a lost generation. They did it for their children, and they know they came, and the children will be well. I cannot transfer them into this new world with no problems. On the former Soviet people came from the Soviet Union, I'll tell you an interesting discussion and an interesting difference. We had been absorbing Jews from the world since day one. After 48, people who survived the Holocaust, people from the Arab countries came. The old days were days of very powerful government, a socialist idea. People came, the government gave them an apartment to live in, a job to work in, a place where they're going to live. Everything was organized. When this wave of immigration came in the late 80s, the beginning of 90s, when the Soviet Union was collapsing, I remember I was in the government then, Minister of Justice, but I dealt with it as well. It was the most moving and fascinating thing I saw in my life. The huge number of Jews flying, and they have where to go. I used to go to the airport just for myself and watch the thousands of people going from the planes, coming from Odessa, from St. Petersburg, from Moscow, from all over the place. It was really like a new exodus, and Jews had where to go, unlike the 40s, where they had nowhere to go and they were all killed. So to me, it was amazing. I dealt with it. I remember we made a decision there, which was, I think, it was right. I supported it. It was not me. Shamir was the prime minister. Peres, I don't want to go into details, but the idea was we won't tell anybody what to do, where to live. We'll give them money. I remember the numbers. For a family of 3, you get this, that number, sum of shekel, so forth, and so forth. And people said, what do you want them? They've never been in a free society. How will they know? Told them there's a swimming pool, let them swim. Let's see what happens with that. We will not tell them what to do. They want to live in Tel Aviv, okay, it will cost higher, they will have a smaller part. They want to use this for business, we will give them the money, they will have to make a choice. In the end and the unemployment was very high then. It was 11% unemployment in 1992. And by the way, we lost the election, partly because of that. But in fact, if you look backwards, the people quickly learned how to swim. And it's a huge success story how this immigration who came from these places were absorbed in the society and played a role in no time like everybody else. No time is a bit exaggerated, but very quickly. So it's again the government going out of this business, allowing the market to play a role, or to be the game rule was the market rule, and I think it was good and important. I would say that I can't give advice to Ukraine. I'm less well informed about Ukraine, and I don't pretend that I have the solutions. But the basic thing is believe in the people. Believe in the people. I think that the attempt of the paternalistic attempt of governments, even from good faith, to think that we know better for you, what you write, usually are wrong. The government shouldn't interfere sometimes when there are awful gaps, but I think that the potential in people is so high. It's the same people who came to Israel, live here. It's the same people. With
the same level of paternalism.
At the same paternalism, the same thing that we had. But we were able, along the years, to really dramatically change the attitude. The government is much less involved, and this gives, to me, as Ron said, this is the bottom line, I would say. Count on the people. Don't ask the people to count on the government. If it's not government jobs, like infrastructure, basic education, and this should be government. People can't do it. But the rest of it on the people.
Thank you.
So I want to address, because you asked about the culture, okay? And we have to remind ourselves, and Dan talked about it, about the problems. How do you create a sense of national identity? How do you create a feeling, of a body with people that come, from Russia, from Ethiopia, from Arab countries? How do you create a society that in essence works together and feels, that they are part and parcel of the state of Israel? Now, this is not easy, because let's take, and Dan touched about it, you have Jews that came from Russia, and as Jews in Russia, they always thought they had to fight the establishment. Suddenly, the establishment is theirs. They're part of the establishment. The transition wasn't easy. It takes time. The differences in culture. Now, Dan talked about it, but what do? Do you put them together? Do you put them in different parts in order for them to integrate into society? So in the sense, the issue here, which is amazing about Israel, is Israel's melting pot, which you would see on the cultural side. Amazing things coming out in music, in dance, in film. That comes from the constant, debate between different cultures, in essence, that creates a new culture which is very diverse, which is Israeli, and was basically produced in Israel because of those inputs. So what you see, I think, and I think this is something that the Ukraine can learn, or to look at least. We had many problems, but in the sense to create that sense of identity, which is not easy. And we have that all along, and the real problems, you have to understand that it goes much deeper. Let's take Jews from Ethiopia. So don't forget, they came from a culture where the man, the male, in the patriarch, he decided on everything, what women and children would do. Suddenly in this new place, suddenly they learn a new language. The woman is faster than him. The children, of course, are much faster. It creates tensions inside the family structures. It not always ends good, but in the sense we learn from this on how to move forward. And for me as an Israeli, you have to understand, and I think Dan would feel the same, for when you see a Jew, man or woman from Ethiopia becoming, a lawyer or an officer in the army or a doctor, you see a beginning of the integration in Israel's society, which is so nice because then you know the real integration process has started. With Russian Jewry, what we received was really a present. I know in the Ukraine to talk about presents from Russia is dangerous today, but we received a huge present. And what was the present? The fact that they came very educated, physics, mathematics, Israel's universities and scientific. There's a huge jump with the structures that we received. And I mentioned, and I can mention many in the sense in that field that moved Israel, I think, many steps forward. But again, the importance was the setting and the feeling that they can say and do everything and challenge everything, and that was a change in the state of mind.
Well, thank you so much, and let's add Ukraine to the picture and see how it looks from the Ukrainian perspective. Роман Зінченко, what's your take on this subject?
Well, speaking of Israeli innovation and their connection with the Ukrainian experience, including the statehood and moving country forward, my connection primarily comes through books, people, companies, and innovations. I actually never visited Israel, but had a lot of insights over recent years coming from Israeli authors and Israeli innovators. And one of the brightest of them was actually aboard the plane flying from Germany to Ukraine, and the audiobook in my headphones was telling the story. This was the final chapter of the book by Shimon Peres, telling the story of Tricher's assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Very tearful and thought-provoking, and it connected me to my student years, because just several months before being assassinated, Yitzhak Rabin visited and had given a lecture in our university at the Institute of International Relations, where I studied. But despite having rather tragic ending, I think the Shimon Peres book's title is probably one of the best guidances for Ukrainian spirit of innovation. It's, let's say, the bar we should reach, because it's titled, amazingly, it's titled No Room for Small Dreams. Well, because we just don't have time for small dreams. And for me, that book was very complementing to another book I have in my library, The Startup Nation by Saul Singer, and I'm proud that it's written by the author to me and my wife, who already published it in Ukrainian. And these are amazing visions for reinventing itself and being resourceful when the only resource is scarcity and constraints. And that's amazing how we're building bridges between our nations and how some of the innovations are transforming the country forward and moving it to the future. I'm taking the seat after Natalia Popovich, who is one of the creators of amazing Israeli-inspired and powered by Erez Eshel schools in Ukraine, Ukrainian Leadership Academy, where I'm proud to be sometimes mentoring. And these are the people who certainly don't have no room for small dreams. They're dreaming large. And well, I think we are facing the periods of history where we are having a lot of similarities, and when we are doing a lot of transformative changes, sometimes that require not tech innovations. I think the major innovations, they are not IT. Don't trust people saying that IT is in innovation industry. I'm in the business of stealing IT innovation, title innovative from IT, and bringing it to the energy sector, and we do believe it will happen someday. And what is most important is reinventing the nation, reinventing the culture, reinventing itself without losing the connection with the roots. And when I see some of the pages in the history, well, they're both totally creatively, they're both very creative, sometimes rather scary, but they are about committed people. Let's say about so we here in Ukraine, we are praising ourselves to being the breadbasket and the leader in the agri-sector. Well, do we have something to learn? Certain. We do have to learn from the kibbutz and kibbutznik movement that were battling the harsh climate conditions of Negev desert, and that led to invention of drip irrigation, which is currently one of the leading tech sectors of Israel. One of my favorite case of resourcefulness actually in the Israeli history comes from another kibbutz who was drilling over half a kilometer deep well to get to water. They got the water, which was warm and salty. And you can barely grow something on salty water. And, well, they were first desperate, then resourceful. That's why they started fish farming in the desert. So when you have constraints, you can do a lot. And am I right that fish export and like expensive fish export is one of the important agri-sector industries in Israel? So for me, this is a lot of things to learn from, to understand and to go forward. And getting back to Shimon Peres, I'm actually really inspired by the phrase of Saul Singer, the author of Startup Nation, who said that Shimon Peres was often named the creator of the industries. And he gives the story of poor, agrarian, water-torn country with no industry, where the wise man is saying, hey, we should have a high tech here, we should have airplanes repair and manufacturing. And people say, no, we can't have it. We even can't make bicycles on our own. And this poor agrarian country is certainly not Ukraine. It's Israel several decades ago. And Shimon Peres was one of those who pushed forward the creation of aerospace industry, and currently Israel is the only nation which is using alternative route for launching its rockets, but it is launching its own rockets and launching its own satellites. So I think the approach of having no room for small dreams is important for being integrated into Ukrainian lives. And I would personally vote for those Ukrainian politicians saying, no, we are not going to rebuild the past glory of Soviet industries. We are going to create industries of the future. The problem, well, still a deficit of the future industry building, but hopefully we will overcome that. What is also important? Well, when faced with the existential threat, people are getting really creative. Was it Golda Meir who said that when your enemies are saying they're going to kill you, better trust them? I don't remember. Believe them. Yeah, believe them. If your enemies, if people are saying they're going to kill you, believe them. Well, during the times of existential threats, the creativity of innovation of people in Israel, including the top leadership, were amazing. Like buying airplanes, cut in halves and in quarters, stitching them together and flying them home over the polar cape. Well, smuggling actually them. But you know, Ukrainian army, which became one of the largest crowdsourcing projects now opposing Russian aggression, is also a kind of the volunteer and crowdsourcing. And you remember those jeeps they are driving? Many of them were smuggled into the country, but they were essential part of protecting the country and keeping the sovereignty. And it was funded by diaspora, by Ukrainian citizens, and that gives me this feeling of similarity, that people weren't relying only on official structures, but creating new institutions. Then there was a need. So I think no room and no time for small dreams is essential for us to learn from Israel, including creating companies across all the spectrum of tech, not only IT, which are truly global, creating corporations, creating innovations both in military and in biotech, medtech, edutech, and all the other sectors of tech, because actually tech is our future. But what is also very important is actually human tech, transforming the culture and getting into the culture which is more productive, more efficient, and more competitive. Well, Israel got through socialism, learned from socialism, say goodbye to socialism, and built one of the most advanced capitalist societies. So, well, I think that the proof that resources are not necessarily the most important for innovative economy, well, many people representing this proof are today in this beautiful city of Kyiv, and it's important for us to learn social models, technical models, financial models, and other aspects of the innovations. And of course, well, we don't have much time for waiting. So probably we should replace our culture of zrada. Well, Ukrainians in the room certainly understand it. That's the Ukrainian
culture of naysaying.
Yeah, culture of naysaying, to the culture of positive disagreement and fighting for the positive solution. And that can drive a lot of innovation, both in government, in the communities, and in businesses. And that could bring a lot of life to them and a lot of new meaning, because we need both new industries, new meanings, and new models. Thanks.
Thank you so much. When you were speaking about the people who arrived from Ethiopia, you were talking how difficult it is to transform, and when you see the doctors of Jewish Ethiopian descent, you understand that this happens. I would say the very similar thing when you see a English-speaking Ukrainian public servant, then you understand the changes are actually coming. So I want to pass the word on to Mykола Мовчан, who is Deputy Minister of Youth, and actually I was usually claiming that Ministry of Youth means Ministry of Future. So please, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you. I would say that we have lots of people in public service speaking English and many other languages. It is also very important to build bridges between the nations. And actually, to what you have told, to Mr. Prozor told, and you, Mr. Merідor, told, I just came to my mind a very famous, a really great Israeli dramatic comedy film, Sof Ha'olam Smola, On the Edge of the World on the Left. This film was manufactured in 2004, and actually the idea of that film, it's what we talked about. You talked about it, the integration of different Jewish people of different parts of the world in Israel, and it's the history of Indian Jewish family who came to the desert Negev, where there was built a city, town, for immigrants from many parts of the world, from Morocco, from Ethiopia, from Central Eastern Europe, from all over the world. And you see there how the interaction of many cultures, because every nation, Jewish people from other countries brought their culture, cuisine, and mode of speaking, also the clothing. But what is interesting that the thing which united all those people was sport. You remember the cricket play, the cricket game, and sport brought all people together. And I think that the sport is the universal instrument, universal tool for integration and for intercultural interaction and communication, cooperation in the large, broad sense of this word. I can remember this one more film, Halakha, the very famous film, the theatrical team of the late 70s, and about with very famous Israeli actors, and about the military band, actual military theater, military band, where people were from all over the world, soldiers from America, from Europe, from other parts of the world, and they interpreted their culture, different songs in different languages, showing the beautiful diversity of diverse cultures which was brought to Israel by those people. That's why I think that such things, sport, youth, as you told Євген about youth's future, and that's absolutely right. Going back to our sports, youth, and innovative issues, I would like to tell that this year, in March of this year, I had a very big delegation from Israel, young people, youth ambassadors. They were under leadership of the Israel ambassador Yitzhak Eldan, and I received the big delegation in our ministry, and we made a presentation about youth policy in Ukraine sports, about innovative technologies, what we do, how we do, and I was impressed the huge interest within Israeli society, within Israeli youth, young people, for Ukraine, for what we do and how we do, and we also brought together Ukrainian Leadership Academy. They had a big interest, and after our ministry, they went to visit the academy, and it was great intercultural exchange about history, historical things, and we have, as the ministry, we make accent a lot on innovative things. I'm absolutely sure, and we in ministry, we are also sure that lifelong learning, education, the cultural interaction, asking questions and finding answers, but asking always questions about the things which can bring us the future for new projects, will bring positive results and fruits. For example, for us, one of the methodologies is the cooperation within international organizations like UNICEF, United Nations system, because, for example, with UNICEF, we have innovative project, e-report. With the UNDP, we have e-project, My Career, when young people can register and can make a test in internet about their future prospects for what profession, what job they are suitable for, and it helped them to find out their way in life, and already being school children or last school classes, they will already know what they want to do in this world. Or, for example, the Bank of Youth Initiatives, where people actually, also in cooperation with the Leadership Academy, where people can elaborate their initiatives, implement them, and spread them information about this. One more thing, we in the ministry, as international organizations, we pay lots of attention to the topic of combating youth unemployment. And we have introduced several years ago a project according, like in the framework of, you remember, United Nations Global Compact, corporate social responsibility. And we have established like Compact Pact for Youth. The idea is to unite big international companies, transnational companies, Ukrainian big companies working here in Ukraine to make a bridge between them and young people, young professionals, to create job places, job opportunities for young people in their companies. For example, to organize, to create places for fellowships, for scholarships, for young people to go to study, for on-the-job trainings. And those companies are very successful. We have already during, like, if I'm not mistaken, during the last 2 or 3 years, we have over 10,000 people across Ukraine who were involved in such like scholarship, on-the-job trainings across Ukraine. And we are happy of it because these youth, they stay in Ukraine and not live in Ukraine, and they will get later their jobs in our country. Then we have, you know, that we have a very good cooperation with the Bogdan Havrilishyn Foundation, and we have it's the very famous Ukrainian mecenat. Unfortunately, he died a couple of years ago, but the deal is developing, and now is the foundation of the family Bogdan Havrilishyn. And we have introduced innovative project, Ukrainian Youth Delegate to the United Nations. And it's in the framework of the program, Youth Will Change Ukraine. And the idea, dream big. Dream big, dream about great things, work, study, learn, education, and every year we organize competitions among Ukrainian youth. And the most talented youth, the winners who speak foreign languages, we select for 2 weeks, 1 month fellowship in the permanent mission of Ukraine in the United Nations. And they work as diplomats, they accompany diplomats, they have speeches there, you know, they really work as youth ambassadors, Ukrainian youth ambassadors to the United Nations. And we're happy of it. In order to to establish and develop like youth bridges between the Ukraine and the world, foreign countries, we have signed 3 years ago the intergovernmental agreements on the youth exchanges between Ukraine and Poland. The idea is to implement projects on to select topics, themes, its system of competitions, and innovative projects is one of the most important pillars of such youth exchanges, because when Ukrainian youth, as you know, as Israeli youth, very talented and has lots of prospects. That's why when we bring youth from NGOs, youth leaders from all parts of Ukraine, it helps to establish better context, to understand cultural heritage, to have mutual understanding, to know each other better. And our next step, we would like to have more such agreements and youth exchanges with other countries of the world, European Union member countries and other countries. And now we would like to establish intergovernmental cooperation on youth exchanges between Ukraine and Israel. For us, it's extremely important. Thank you.
All right, thank you. There is a curse for the moderator when the lunchtime is approaching. You don't want to stand between the panel and lunch, and I believe that the dinner curse should be probably a stronger one. So let's leave just a little time for one round of questions here and see who would like to ask something. I see 2 questions. If there would be a third one, we would take the 3 and then round up. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Do we have someone supporting with the mic? Yes. The gentleman there, please.
Do we have a simultaneous translation?
Yes, we do. You have to talk into the mic.
Тоді я буду говорити українською. Насправді питання у мене до представників Ізраїлю. Чи можете, воно надзвичайно просте, навіть тривіальне, чи можете ви навести приклад якихось інноваційних проєктів, які ви в своїй кар'єрі підтримали і які дали якийсь ефективний результат? Тобто мене цікавить практичні інновації. А запитання також ще одне, дуже коротке, до представника нашого уряду. Чи це правда, що ви досі використовуєте в своїй роботі не електронний документообіг, а для того, щоб прийняти будь-яке рішення, ви ходите з листочком паперу по всім кабінетам і збираєте підписи? Дякую.
Okay. Before you transfer the mic to the following, could you pass the mic? Yeah, the lady is there. Did you get the question? Did you get the question? The question is, what is your personal experience of innovating? Yeah, and how it worked, and then I think the other question is to the Ukrainian government representative, who always gets beaten by the public. That's part of life. So the second question, there was a lady there, right?
Yom Tov. My name is Olga Vasilchenko, PhD student, Institute of International Relations. Actually,
Could you speak up?
Oh, yeah. Is it okay? Fine.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I wanted to ask almost the same question as my previous colleague did about the projects you are proud of. But actually now I would like to wonder about the semantic politics of Israel, and how would you comment on that in the context of its innovation policies? Thank you.
The semantic?
Semantic.
Do you?
Languages or what?
I mean senses. I mean, well, let's call it information psychological policy.
Okay,
Anyway.
is that, you're talking about integration of people with different backgrounds?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, okay. This is something that we've discussed partially.
Thank
You can elaborate on that. And the third question we had here. Yeah.
Erev Tov. My name is Alex Lubeski, and I'm a representative of Israel and technological company. But my question would be about state building. So in the state of Israel was an idea that unite all the Israelis from Ethiopia, from ex-Soviet Union, from Ukraine, etc. And what do you think? What has to be an idea? It's for Israeli part, of course. What has to be the idea that could unite Ukrainians? It has to be nationalism. It has to be some American dream or Ukrainian dream or something like this. Thank you.
Okay, a tough one. Yeah, that's okay. Let's see how well we do, and then we'll see if we have time for another round, or we need it for diplomatic reasons.
Okay, let me say something that will paint a somewhat more a realistic picture. The picture that you heard from me or from us may be a bit too bright. Where did we do wrong? It has to do with some of your questions. There still are some parts of our society that are not well integrated. Some of them because maybe of language, I'll come to it in a minute. Some of them because they are afraid of what comes with the openness to this technology world. Let me speak of two parts of the society that are not yet well integrated. There's a process, but it's not easy. The Arab population of Israel. The fact, for example, that a woman needs to go on her own and study somewhere. In some Arab societies, women should not go out on their own. And it's hard to convince the family that you allow your girl of 16 years of age to go to take a bus and go to work, or 18 years or 20 years, your wife, to go and work on her own, not in the family. So there is a cultural problem here. And to this day, the participation in the labor force of Arab men, and Arab women more so, is lower, much lower than the Jewish participation. It's not because they are lazy, but there's something in the culture that says women should stay at home, not work outside. So it's not enough to say, do what you like, if you don't educate and you're not ready to fight for this. And it's not easy. It will be seen as an attack on the culture. Their culture is what Ron said earlier about the Ethiopian Jewry and others, where the father was the patriarch. He decides what the woman should vote and what the woman should do, and she would prepare the food for him, and he would do the job. He brings he goes out for hunting and brings the food home, and she has to do the cleaning thing. There is a cultural change here. It's not just technology. And some societies take it tough. The same thing happens to an extent in the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, where they don't allow, many of them don't allow the children to use this smartphone, because they see there women that are not always dressed. What will happen to them? How can you do it? You need to control it. And you hear things that you shouldn't hear, questions that should not be asked. So there is it's not just the technology and the openness and let the people do what they think. You find yourself coping with well-based and very well-founded traditions that are protecting certain segments of society, and you need to penetrate them. It's not easy. If you look at the world today, I don't want to expand that much, the technology, the Western technology that built this has brought these Western ideas of openness and equality and freedoms to parts of the world that were not used to it, and they are fighting back. With terror, with other things, don't interfere. Live in New York, don't come to us and tell us how to live here. And you penetrate not through armies, but you penetrate through this, through the national network. So even inside Israel, I don't want to go globally, inside Israel, the spread that we want to allow, the spreading of the technology that allows people to use their powers and do things and search, sometimes finds objection in certain societies. We need to do more. We haven't done enough. It has to do with other problems that we have between Arabs and Jews, and in my view, I'm not in the habit of criticizing my government abroad. I do criticize it, which is why I'm sitting now in Kiev rather than the government, because I did not agree with the government on certain things. But this is fine, it's okay. I think that the government should do more in that and not less in trying to help spread these ideas. They come with values. It's not just the trick. Now, I was asked about the how do you build your nation, around what idea. You spoke of us, the Jewish idea. Let me say, I don't want to analyze now the Jewish story. After all, of our existence as a nation that started over 3,000 years ago, historically, most of the time we were not on our land. We were in exile for practically 2,000 years. And people lived with that. They were not innovative enough and creative enough and courageous enough. They lived there. Here, in Russia, in Germany, all over the place. Something happened in the world. We spoke of it earlier. The Jews couldn't live here anymore because in many places they were not wanted. And they felt it coming. It has to do with anti-Semitism and definitely with the murder of Jews in the Second World War in big numbers. So there was something that shook us from the outside. But the Zionist idea that built a nation in Israel, as I said earlier in the morning, it's unlike other national movements. It's not only building a nation and independence, it's bringing them from all over the world to one land where they were not there for 2,000 years. It's a huge project. So there is a competition or a tension between two trends, and the modern world proposes this and shows this to all the nations. One is the global ideas, which basically are liberal ideas of freedoms, of individual rights, and we spoke of it earlier. The language, now you can't really connect this world if you don't speak English. I don't know about China, I'm not Chinese, but you can't get to the internet and you don't know things if you can't speak this language. The other thing is, how do you build your own culture, which is not English. It's Ukrainian, it's Hebrew, it's Arabic, it's German. So the tension between building my own culture and my own language and my own literature and my own poetry, you read the translation. But there's a language that has a lot in it. We revived the language that was not alive for practically, 1,500 years or more. And I'm very proud of it, I love it. But I know that I cannot really succeed in the world if I don't understand English as well. So if you speak of how you build your nation around what idea, it's a question that is bigger than the 2 minutes I'm speaking here now. One should be very careful not to do everything in the English language, although it's very good that you speak English. But one should not be monolingual. The English people are monolingual, by the way. and it narrows their thinking. Another language gives you another look on the world. The same reality looks different in French or English or German or Russian or Ukrainian. It's not the same word. So to know more culture is always very good and very enriching. So I speak of the English language. You became now the lingua franca, the word that speaks English. To connect to the world, you need that. But develop your own culture is of great importance. It has to do with the landscape here, with the people here, with the history here. It shouldn't be done, as usually it's done, even in our case sometimes, against the others. I'm not the enemy. I'm not Russian. I'm not Arab. This is a dangerous way. You end up with all the negatives. But building your own, if you spoke of literature and culture, ask me, by the way, what is my literature and poetry? Much of it has to do with this country, you know. I knew about this city and this country from Hebrew literature. There were two very important writers, one called Shalom Aleichem, the other called Mendele Masforim, who were from this area, and they even had a name for Kiev, which is a different name. They didn't use the name Kiev, it was the name, but I knew how it looked because I read it. I was brought up on this. The poetry I read, there was a poet again from Ukraine called Chernychovsky, very important Israeli poet. And I remember the landscape of the vast fields of Ukraine from his poetry. But this is the past. Today, if you read the Israeli literature, you read about Israel, Israeli life, Israeli problem, Israeli landscape. The way to develop your culture is not by what we are not, which people usually easier do. It's easier to say, I'm not this. But develop your own. What is so important in Ukrainian? Why is it important to be Ukrainian? What does it mean? That I live in Kiev or in Kharkov? No, it's not enough. What is there in it in terms of values and culture and language? So this is something that is positive. It doesn't happen overnight. So I don't need an organizing idea. It's all that Ukraine stands for. And I think this is something that can be done, but it takes the understanding that this is a project that you're building now. The last thing is about innovation. In my experience, I'll give you an experience, not of myself. I'm not a great innovator in technology. I hope I innovated some things in my thinking, but this is not what I tell you. A story that has to do with the other room of technology and defense. Israel is known to have a good army. In the years that I was Deputy Prime Minister, I was Minister of Intelligence as well. I was in charge of the intelligence community, and I spent a lot of time with them. One of my visits in the Mossad, the Israeli security services abroad, intelligence services abroad, I visited certain units there, and I see a person, maybe 30 years of age, dressed in civil, it's not military. Doesn't look a hero, doesn't look with muscles, looks like somebody who is studying in university. And he explained some things he did to me. I went there with the deputy chief of the Mossad of the days, and it was something in the cyber world. And when I left the room, the man who accompanied me, the deputy chief of the Mossad, asked me, do you know, the name, I don't want to repeat the name of this guy, he's from Jerusalem, by the way, my city. You know what he is? I said, what is he? He says, the man who looks so clumsy to you, he is the most important fighter we have in the IDF. So, what do you mean? Yeah, fighter is not what you were used to. Be muscles and look very healthy and very, no. He, with his brains, does more to us as a fighter than the warrior that has the muscles that we were raised to believe is the modern. So this means, by the way, equality for women and men, because a woman can do this fighting just opposite the screen as a man can do. So I remember this experience. I remember this, the best fighter we have is this guy who looks somebody who would not be able to finish a course in the paratroopers of Israel. But he's the best fighter today, not what I had when I was young. I wanted to be strong, and I think I was all right, not the strongest, but yeah, still I'm for gym, I'm for sports, I'm not against it. But the world changes, and this change gives a lot of opportunity, and innovation is part of that and everybody can do it. Be poor, be rich, be woman, be man, be Arab, be Jew. And this is a last thing. Why a man who dreams big, not small, as Shimon Peres used to say, and you just quoted him, why does he do something after it? Dreaming is another word. Because he knows that if he won't do it, nobody will do it. The government will not do it. It's a psychological change. Don't wait for the government to do it. It's your world. Do something about it. You have an idea, do something. Don't wait for others to do it for you. This is a change of psychology. Some people are used to say, all right, why doesn't the government do it? Complain, the government is bad, the government. Forget the government. Do what you think you can do and be innovative.
Thank you.
So,
Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah.
yes, I will start by addressing the Minister for Sport. Why? Because, Alex, to answer your questions, Israel, I don't know if you know it, this is breaking news for you. Israel in the sport arena is #1. We are world champions in explaining why we never win. We explain in the most sophisticated ways why we just lost the most important soccer match, why we missed. We are #1 in explaining why we never make it, okay? And believe me, I can give you a whole lecture on this, okay? But why am I using this as an example? Because it explains some of the Israeli culture, okay? It's not coincidental that we are not so good in sports, because sports needs discipline, hard work. This is not a sprint, this is a marathon. Israelis are not good at this. And when I make the transition into what we are talking about, we have to find the ways and what added value the Ukraine has or Israel has. This is why you can, amazing startups in Israel, but very few companies that are really big companies, because you need persistence, you need discipline, and you need a culture of organization, okay? We are not good at this, okay? So Shimon Peres that you quoted, if he would be here, he would say, the biggest contribution of Jews to the world is dissatisfaction. Have you seen a satisfaction? No, 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 no. That's why we are creative, innovative, inventive, but we are not good at structures, okay? So we have a lot to learn from others on structures. And why am I saying it to you? Because you have to really find out your minuses and your pluses and focus on the pluses, okay? And understand that the minuses are a real problem culturally, okay? From a social point of view. So when I look and try to give an answer, I think part of what you have to create, that Israel was part and parcel, we were lucky in parentheses, to have enemies around us. Because those enemies around us created the sense of togetherness, the sense that we have to rely on each other, because our neighborhood is not exactly Liechtenstein or Luxembourg. And because it's not Liechtenstein and Luxembourg, I think it's understood by many in the Israeli society that the aspect of working together, if we don't work together, our chances of survival are very limited, okay? So Alex was asking a question which is basically a tricky question. Nationalist on the other side, with all the minuses of nationalism, okay? But on the other side, the element of bringing a society together with a sense of purpose and identity. So, to answer that, I think you have to create that sense of identity through nationalism, working with a very open eye to make sure that you don't move into the wrong direction of nationalism. But in order to create that, it's important, because Israel is amazing. When I see, and Israelis feel it, for me, the first time that I really understood who I lived with, seriously, was only in the army. I was in an Dan, I think, comes from the same neighborhood in Jerusalem, you know, certain social economic status, culture. I was shocked at what I found out, who I'm living with. Where did I find out? Only in the army. And believe me, my best friends that I made in the army. But I understood things that I didn't really know. So in the sense, and then you go to, you know, you inject into university and other places, and we live in different circles like this. But I can tell you that what is really amazing is the cultures that people bring into this big pot. You know, and it's not just Ethiopian or Russian or Ukraine, or it's, you know, it's an amazing, you know, mix that that I think at the end is based on the fact, and I repeat that because it's really important, challenging and asking questions all the time. And when you see that, I think, and you really incentivize this, I think this would be the best answer. I want to give you on who asked the question on technology, somewhere over there, on innovation. I know that you heard probably of Israel's Iron Dome, the Iron Dome system that gives an answer to rockets, short-end rockets. But basically, what story is the Iron Dome? The Iron Dome is a story of people coming together and understanding there's a common threat. The people that are solving the issue, that's their families out there, that's their brothers, that's their sisters. And the issue here is, you know, to work on something day and night where you know it has a direct effect on you. And the constant, again, coming out with those solutions that have a direct impact on how we live. And I really, from my point of view, the amazing thing about Israel is this open debate that you see on all parts of society. And I think if there's one thing that I would say, if I may, is, you know, to create a society that asks those questions all the time, inside the family, outside of the family. That's the best way to move forward.
All right. We've taken over the time. Let me use my powers of moderator and put the question about the paperwork in the ministry into the domain of setting up a museum of old governance in the ministry. And let's relax at that point. We're 6 minutes overdue. Thank you very much. This is a brilliant panel. Thank you to the Israeli and Ukrainian participants. Thank you to this great audience. Thank you to the organizers who put us together, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
You know, I would like to come.
Thank you.